it's okay to say to them, mommy is still learning too, right? They get to know that you're a human being and learning is a lifelong process. It's okay to say mommy doesn't have all the answers. Mommy's doing her best, right? The power of the pause, the hand over the heart and taking a nice deep breath in and out. It's so recharging, but it just gives you that moment of clarity is what you need.
Welcome to the Wellness That Fits podcast, where we help busy moms eat well, restore energy, and clear brain fog without sacrificing family time or your sanity. I'm Cassie Groeschl, registered dietitian and mom of 3. I believe wellness should fit your real life, not the other way around. If you're tired of complicated wellness trends and want simple, sustainable strategies for meal prep, holistic nutrition, and time-saving routines, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome back to Wellness That Fits. Today, I am so excited to introduce Corinne Zuleger, and she is an empowerment coach, a mom of 3 grown children, a wife for almost 31 years, and a woman who's walked through burnout, silence, grief, and the slow unraveling of self, only to rise, heal, and come home to who she truly is. And I'm really excited that I get to talk to her today because she has undergone burnout herself, as I mentioned, and she has so many brain health strategies that she's going to share with us today for stress resilience. And I know we could all use a little bit of that. So, Corinne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Cassie. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, Corinne, for people who might not know you, can you share a little bit about that burnout story that I referenced before? And then, share a little bit about your personal healing journey.
Yeah, our kids were small. I think our son was around 2 years old, and Saturday morning going about the things, but I was crying and I couldn't figure out why I was crying. I just felt very overwhelmed. And I could hear my husband in the shower. And I went in there and I pushed the shower curtain back and he just looked at me and he's like, Corinne, I can't help you. And it was like in that moment, it was like he was just stabbing me with a knife and I dropped to the floor and just sobbed. It was in that moment I was contemplating taking my life. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I feel like such a burden and I didn't really know what it was. And I started to come up with a plan. And then a little voice inside of me told me to pick up the phone. And I did, and I would call an elder wisdom friend from church, and I connected with her, and she knew exactly where to direct me. The rest is history. I was able to get my life back together, and that was the beginning of recognizing that I was trying to be what other people wanted me to be, and it wasn't working.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think so many of us have been maybe not fully like we're, as dramatic as, wanting to take our lives, but experiencing anxiety or depression. And motherhood throws a lot at you. And we oftentimes wear a lot of hats and we're juggling a lot of things. And I know you had mentioned this before, thinking that we are supposed to do it all as women and do not ask for help. Like this is something you're supposed to be doing. So I love the fact that you are blending brain science, emotional intelligence, and spiritual alignment, and your own hard earned wisdom from your own experience to help women back to their authentic selves. So, can you explain a little bit what you do in your work with, your work with women and what you help them with?
A lot of it is coming home to self, right? There's been so many external voices. So it can go back all the way back to healing the inner child wounds that we may have. If you did come through childhood without any wounds, you really are like a unicorn because we all have something, whether it was on the playground of life gives us all some sort of wound. So first we look at what does that look like? I like to do the whole picture healing though, right? Because if somebody comes to me and they're experiencing, say, burnout, I want to look at the whole picture. Like, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? Are you moving your body? Are you taking time to connect with your source, God, whatever word you use? What are your support systems in your network? And we do so many different types of things. and every person is different. So I like to say I mix up a special little cake recipe for them based on the tools that I do have because I'm trained in neuroencoding, which is essentially a rewiring of the brain. It's just helping you pick new thoughts, change thought patterns. Also, a brain trainer for Dr. Daniel Amen. I have certifications in advanced practicing in trauma practicing. That's been a big piece of for my own personal healing. I'm certified in techniques that work in the subconscious area so that we can do some maybe quick rewiring, if you will. So everything looks a little bit different. So it might be like, if you came in, where we might start with you might not be with an inner child type thing. It might be with where you are in this present moment, like going from there.
Sure. So just kind of pulling out some different strategies from the
Mhm.
hat based on, or from the toolkit based on what the person needs. So I'm curious, what are the main struggles that clients come to you with? I would imagine burnout, and overwhelm, like you mentioned, but I mean, how are you seeing some other symptoms arise?
What's interesting with women is I see disconnection. So what's really interesting with that is connection is really that's our heart. And heart disease is actually the number one killer of women. And so when I look at disconnection, it's what are we disconnected from? And it's disconnection from our authentic self, right? We have these roles that we play and we live by certain rules being women, right? Especially if you are in the mom era. And so there can be this belief out there that the children should come first, no matter what. And the reality of it is that we need to serve ourselves first because a healthy mama can serve her children better, right? So just taking that time to fill up, I don't even want to say, I want to overflow your cup. I want to overflow your cup so that you do have something to give to other people. And nurturing and loving your children and your husband, it takes a lot of energy, right?
Hmm.
So we need to be able to do that. And so what comes in is it's disconnection, it's overwhelm, right? We have what I call toxic 10 or fear of success, fear of failure, imposter syndrome, really big with women. It's like, am I measuring up? To when I start to look around in this external world. And Joseph McClellan III is one of my mentors. And Joseph would say, it's self to self for progress, self to others for what's possible. So if I am looking to the left or the right, it's really to see what's possible out there and not so I can compare that, she's further ahead or she looks better in her jeans or anything like that. It's really like just that's possible for me if that's something that I should choose to want because it fits in my authentic self. But that's a lot of it too, right? The women are coming to me that they don't feel authentic. And in the breakdown on the bathroom floor is I wasn't feeling authentic. Like this isn't me. I really love my children and I was seeking something for myself at the end of the day because I was giving it all to them.
Hmm.
Does that help?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know I for sure can resonate with a lot of the symptoms and struggles that you mentioned. And I know it's so cliche to say we need to fill our own cup up, but it is so true. I mean, we cannot be showing up to our families when we are completely sleep deprived and not eating right and not addressing that emotional and mental health aspect of things. And so, yeah, I mean, we absolutely need to be figuring out how we can better ourselves and showing up for ourselves and prioritizing ourselves. And that's okay. And, we're going to help others by taking care of ourselves. So, yeah, I love that you mentioned that. And, I just wanted to point out to when you had mentioned your mentor, in that comparison. My goodness, how many of us are constantly comparing ourselves, whether it's through social media or in person, to the mom next to us, or especially on social media when we see that mom who's doing so many things for her kid or homeschooling and seems like she's spending 8 hours a day with her children and raising these perfect angel babies, right? And
Yeah.
it's so hard to not, to see what's possible. I like how you put that, and how your mentor puts that, like, compare more so to see what's possible, and then looking to yourself for progress. Like, how did I improve, whether it's 1% or 2% more than the day before? And I think progress against yourself is absolutely the best metric. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you had mentioned a couple techniques, and I am just dying to explore them. Can we first start with Dr. Amen? Because
Yeah.
I follow him. He is a brain expert for people who do not know who he is. And he has a couple books out there, really well known podcasts. And he also has a certification program. And so you are certified. Well, I'll let you kind of explain that a little bit more. So explain, what strategies or principles you use from Dr. Amen that you incorporate into your practice.
So with Dr. Amen, one of my favorite things that he has is ANTS. And ANTS is an acronym for automatic negative thoughts. So he likens it to you're sitting at your picnic and you're enjoying your picnic, and all of a sudden these little ants start coming in, and before you know it, there's an infestation. And that happens with our thoughts. Could be humming along, life is going great, but for whatever reason, a thought will pop in and it can take over. With automatic negative thoughts, he has a way of squashing them. And so with that, it's really like cross-examining these ants. So just because and he'll say, you don't have to believe every stupid thought you have, right? I try to be a little more gentle. But you don't have to believe every negative thought. Now, what I do, I have an inner critic class that I like to teach in person. And what I teach is that I name my negative voice. And so mine is Nancy because Nancy is negative. And, people have different names. And I also have, depending on what that voice is bringing up. So sometimes it's Judy because she's really judgy. Sometimes it's Victoria because she can be pretty vicious, like if she's got the claws out. But I like to give it a little name just to play the game, right? So naming the voice, what is it? Because it just kind of puts a stop to it. So with Dr. Amen's work, he teaches, and then therefore I teach, is we get to cross examine it. You kind of put it on the witness stand and you get to say, you ask these 5 questions. Is it true? So the thought pops up and I get to say, is it true? Well, I might say maybe, or at this moment, I say, yeah, it's true. And then the second question is, can I say with 100% certainty that this is true? Now that's the kicker, right? Because 100% certainty, you have to be hands down, like, I know this is true. And then that's where you're gonna get like, no, the answer is no. I can't say for 100% certainty. So when I teach this to high school kids, I'll say, like girls will be like, well, she doesn't like me. Look at the way she's looking at me. And I say, is it true that she doesn't like you? And they're like, yeah, she doesn't like me. Can you say with 100% certainty that it's true? And they're like, wow, look at the way she's looking at me. And I'm like, how do you know she doesn't have gas? My God. And they just lose it because they're like, and I'm like, well, right. She could just be looking right through you. And then the biggest learning, right, is to know that when you ask yourself that question, can I say with 100% certainty this is true? And the answer is no. Then the next question is, how does this make me feel, right? How do I feel when I have this thought? Well, me thinking that she doesn't like me makes me feel really crummy. And is that how I want to feel? That's not how I want to feel. So question number 4 is, how do you want to feel? How do I want to feel? Well, I want to feel like I'm liked, right? And then you flip it and you turn it into an affirmation. And that's the 5th part of it is it becomes an affirmation. And you make it, like, I am liked or I am likable or just something like that. And that's where you're telling yourself then. That would be a way to handle it the way Dr. Daniel Amen would. In neuroencoding, I would teach you something called the STOP technique. And the STOP technique is an acronym. And okay, so this thought pops up and I don't have to believe it. And it's this negative thought and it comes in and I say, stop. That's the S. I say, stop. And I stand up. And the reason that is effective is because it creates a little blank spot called a scotoma in your brain. It's like when have you ever gone to go in the kitchen and you stand up really fast and you go in there and then you're like, I have no idea what I came in here for.
All the time.
I just come in here for I'm like, you are not getting senile or anything like that. You just created a scotoma. So that little blank spot gives you an opportunity to slip something different in there. So you stand up, take a nice deep breath. I like to put my hand on my heart. And then I start to think, what's the outcome that I want? That's the O. So the T is take a deep breath. The O is what's the outcome I want? In here, you're going to insert things that bring you joy. The outcome that I want is right now, I want to feel like I do when I hear my kids laughing together or when I see a sunset or, something that brings you either calm or peace or joy or love or a nice emotion in there. And then I'm going to anchor it in. So I want to pump my fists and my arm, and I'm going to start thinking that, and I'm going to start saying it over and over, right? I'm going to anchor it in, and then I'm going to praise myself is the P. I'm going to pat myself on the back. I'm going to shake my booty, and I'm going to celebrate that I just interrupted that negative thought. And the beauty about this is the more you do it, the more your brain starts to recognize, oh, well, it doesn't pay for me to have that thought anymore because she just keeps shooting it down. You can do it that way. Or if it's something that is really deep rooted in you, uh, like maybe it's a grief that it's, from something way in the past and that's what you're looking to eradicate, you can take and do the stop technique like 10 times in a row. So you can bring up the unresourceful feeling. Well, I can give you this example. Yesterday was the anniversary of my mom's death. And it would be really easy to have that kind of drag me under, right? That to remember how she died instead of remembering how she lived, right?
Mhm.
So what I can do with that is, and I have done with that, is I would bring myself into that very sad feeling that unresourceful feeling. And then I would exercise the stop technique 10 times in a row and then do that 3 times a day for a week. And by the time you get to the end of the week, you're like, I don't even know like why this bothered me anymore. And it just all goes to frequency. It's just lessening the vibration of that emotion in my body.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating the fact that I mean, science proves we can rewire those circuits in our brain and it's not easy, right? I mean, this is the purpose for therapy and for coaches to constantly be teaching people these strategies because you've been doing this, probably women have been doing this for so long, or anybody really.
Uh,
You've been having these negative thoughts, and maybe it's your environment, maybe it's, we had talked a little bit before about like biochemistry, and it's possibly a lot of other things like sleep deprivation and your diet and movement, and all of those things can come into play. But when you have those negative thoughts and that circuitry that your brain is like, this is the only thing I know, this is the only thing I know. And when you have to retrain it, I just love the fact that it is possible to change that circuitry, but it's not without intentionality. And like you had mentioned, you're doing this multiple times a day. And then your brain will start to learn. I mean, just like our brains do, it learns this new pattern, this new circuitry. And that's really how rewiring happens. And that's really the idea of neuroplasticity, too, is that our brains aren't stagnant. Like you learn one thing, you can unlearn something and practice a new way, too.
yeah.
So,
I say that you can teach an old dog a new trick. We had a dog and she died over a year ago and I don't know, she was probably like 9 or so and I was like, I am tired of this dog barking at me to feed her. I'm going to teach her sign language. It worked when the babies were little, so I'm going to teach her sign language. And I taught her to sign eat. She would bring her paw up by her mouth and I taught her to eat. I have video footage to prove it, right? Wiring, like, we used to think that the brain was static, right? It was just this mass, and once you learn this thing, and that was just the way it was. When I was going through my ramp training, we actually watched a little video, a live video of somebody in a session, and it watched the brain synapses rewire, and it was so cool to see that just go down a different path, and I equate it the neural pathway to getting stuck in the mud. When you get your tire stuck in the mud and you're hitting the gas and you're just spinning, spinning, spinning. That's what happens when you think a thought over and over and over. It creates that wire, that little path, like digging that tire in the mud, and you're just spinning away, and all you're doing is grooving it in deeper. You're not getting yourself out of there. You need a little piece of cardboard to get out. And when we're looking at wanting to rewire something, the reason we want to rewire the thought is because that thought is what creates the feeling, and the feeling thought over and over and over again, right? If I think the thought and then I have that very same feeling and I do it again and I do it again, and that repetition in that manner, I've created the emotion. And then when I have that same emotion over and over and over, now it's become a habit. And then that habit that I do over and over and again, that becomes the habit, then becomes the belief system, right? So now it's just something I believe about myself. I actually believe it's part of me, and people start to own it, right? It's my fill in the blank, my anxiety, my depression, my mood swing, my whatever, right? Instead of, right, anything that goes behind I am needs to be positive, right? Because all of that is part of your identity. And we don't want to identify with anything that is less than positive. We want
Right.
it to be positive.
Yeah, and I think a good example of this is maybe when somebody was told in school, you're maybe a teacher. So I've heard this so many times, like a teacher has said, you're not the best at math or you're not the best at reading or something like that. And a kid will tell themselves that as a fact. Like, okay, they may have been struggling, at one point in time. But I think, until recently, really, there was a lot of this belief around this fixed mindset and now, I mean, there's a lot around growth mindset versus fixed mindset, but the fact that we can actually change our brains, we can get better at something, and we can have those positive thoughts, even though the negative ones still will probably come up. They may come up less frequently the more we train our brain to rewire towards the positive thoughts. So again, I love the fact that this is science backed and that we can rewire our brain with positive thoughts.
Yeah. And you've been given dominion, right? You have been given the power and the ability to actually think, right? We don't just simply react from a place of like, this is instinct. We actually have the ability to think through and process things. And with that, you have choices, right? The circle of responsibility, right? What I think and how I feel, what I do, all of those things. And that's in neurocoding. It's as I think, so I feel, as I feel, so I do, as I do, so I have, right? All of that in the circle of responsibility is on you. It's easy, right? I want to project it out and say, he did it or she did it and it made me and this made me. And at the end of the day, it's the person that you're looking at in the mirror that the full responsibility is on. It doesn't mean that things didn't happen as children, because they do. And, sometimes very, very terrible things happen. But then you reach an age of reason and you get to make different choices. And they're out there for you to be able to make the different choices, right? And repetition is a way. They say repetition is the mother of all skill. And then celebration is the father. This is the piece we're missing. If I did something, even if it's the tiniest thing, you get to celebrate it. I climbed up to a top of a telephone pole, and then I got to the top, and my mentor's down on the bottom, and he's like, "Do you want to stand on it?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Okay, that's a decision, right? No, I don't want to stand on it. Okay, do you want to sit on it?" I do, right? And every little butt cheek that I moved on the top of that telephone pole, he was down below celebrating me going, "That's a decision, that's a decision, that's a decision," right? We get to make those decisions for ourselves. And with you get to do that with your family too, because how you choose to raise your family is how you choose to, be their mama. And what you said about the teachers in the school, I had that happen with one of our daughters in the whole and it was math. And it took forever to get her to understand that that was the opinion of one person, but it was so deeply entrenched that that became a belief, right? She would tell herself over and over, well, Mrs. So and so told me I was no good at math. Mrs. So and so told me I was no good at math. And I'm like, baloney.
Mhm.
So it was it's such a true thing. And I've heard this before is I do not have to accept your diagnosis. I don't have to accept that. I can
Mhm.
choose for myself what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole victim and victor mentality, I could talk about that all day, honestly. But I wanted to touch on your celebration because I agree with you. I don't think we celebrate enough. I know I for sure don't. There's a lot of, let's get better at this, Cassie. Like, here are the goals. Let's get better, repetition. But how often am I really celebrating the things that,
You need one of these.
yes, toot your own horn? And I actually have to tell you a funny story. I will randomly, I will celebrate moments, in front of, like, my family and my husband. I'll be like, "This was a really good meal tonight," and I'm totally tooting my own horn. And
Yeah.
and
Let
and
it
my
sing.
husband's like, "You have no" what did he say? "No shortage of, like, compliments for yourself," and I'm like, "Honestly." And then last night, my daughter, Evie, she's 3 years old, I forget what we were doing, but she said something that was a compliment to herself. She's like, "I'm good at this, dad." And he looked at me and he smiled and I'm like, "See?
Yes,
She knows." I mean, how
it's
else are
itching.
our kids and our girls going to learn that if we are not saying it ourselves? And I will toot my own horn and I know I have a lot of flaws and I give myself grace because we're only human. But when I do something right, I might celebrate it a little bit, and I don't care if my family thinks it's crazy, but we have to teach those things to our kids. They're not just gonna see that, especially in women, unfortunately, especially, in moms and women who, like you said, we struggle with anxiety and measuring up and comparison and all those other things. So, yeah, I just wanted to share
Yeah.
that.
Well, and looking in the mirror, right? They're they are little sponges. For the first 8 to 10 years, everything gets stored in them, right? I mean, it always gets in their subconscious, but you don't maybe necessarily have a recollection of it, right? So up until they're about 10, the prefrontal cortex doesn't even really exist, right? So they don't have this logic brain. That's why we can tell the stories that we tell about flying reindeer and different things like that because they they will take that all in. And so they see everything you do, the way you look at yourself, the way you talk to yourself, and they're going to take that in. And then it's not just you cuz the last thing I want to do is guilt beat another mama because I know despite my very best efforts, tantrums still were had
Mhm.
because they're their own little person and they have things inside of them that they can't quite express, but they're watching, how are you responding to that? Are you reacting or responding? How do you look at yourself? How do you talk about yourself? How do you and your husband talk to each other? How do you treat other people out on the street? What do you say about people? Because children are born pure love. And that's what, I'd like to keep them that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think we, as parents and moms, need to be those role models. When I have moms coming to me saying my kid is a very picky eater, or I can't get my kid to eat this, and I'm like, well, what does your diet look like? And they're like, well, I'm offering them all the veggies. And I'm like, but are you eating all of these things also? And then all of a sudden, it's like, and I'm not saying that always happens, but it's like
Oh,
we can't be expecting our kids to do things that we don't do ourselves, right? And that's with movement and eating and getting good sleep, and especially stress resilience. This is something that, in the past few years, I've really dove more into. And I think personally, for me, showing my kids stress resilience is one of the hardest things because I'm still learning so much about it and learning the techniques and strategies. And some of those things, like you had mentioned, you almost have to say them out loud, especially in front of your kids, to teach them and be that role model. And even if it's something as simple as, taking a break, we had talked about this on your podcast, where you might take a mom break. Or, for example, what I tend to do is if I'm getting really frustrated, and this doesn't happen all the time because I'm not perfect, but I might stop and just say a quiet prayer. My kids are looking at me like, what is mom doing? I'll be like, please, dear God, give me the patience I need to address this situation and help my kids listen better. So I think seeing some of those things out loud, like, do you have any other tools for us busy, overwhelmed moms who are just at the max of overstimulation? Like, how
Oh,
can we continue to show up and be patient and loving and show our children that stress resilience that they need?
one thing that came to me when you were talking was it it's okay to say to them, "Mommy is still learning too," right? They get to know that you're a human being and learning is a lifelong process. It's okay to say, "Mommy doesn't have all the answers. Mommy's doing her best." Right? The power of the pause in just the hand over the heart and taking a nice deep breath in and out, it's so recharging, but it just gives you that moment of clarity is what you need. Because when everything is coming at you, all 3 kids want something from you, your husband needs this, and you're like, "Ah," I think that I don't you might be too young for this, but they had these Calgon commercials back in the day. It was like a bubble bath. "Calgon, take me away," right? It's really you're not going to go take a bubble bath in the midst of all of that, but you can practice a pause and just take a nice deep breath and go, just a simple reminder. What is my word? What's going to ground you in? Is it peace? Is it love? Is it joy? The reminding of through all of the chaos of parenting, you became a parent because you wanted to share love. And we can lose that focus in the daily chaos. And then I also want to remind you to give yourself grace. Being a human being is a messy process. There was never nothing about perfection expected of you when you incarnated to this planet.
Hmm.
Your whole purpose here is to evolve as a human being, right? Your soul's here to grow, and you're going to continue that process. And the process goes like this, up in a little spiral as you evolve in your soul. But sometimes you're going to come and you're going to do a little backslide. And that's part of the human messiness. And when you say to your kids, Mommy is still learning, Mommy is still growing, they get to see and understand, right? And especially when they get to the point of that reason, right? When the prefrontal cortex comes on and now they start to think logically and they're like, oh, yeah. And then you've set an example of, you know what? It's okay. It's okay sometimes to get grumpy, but we're gonna maybe have a better way to handle it. And if you call yourself out and say, "Oh, mom goofed up.
Hmm.
Mom was having a bad day," it doesn't make it okay, and I'm gonna apologize for that, but I'm gonna do better next time. And then tell them how. And next time that happens, I'm gonna practice a pause, instead of blowing up or whatever happens, right? And then they get to see that you're just human.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that's super useful for us as moms because it's really hard to put bigger strategies and longer strategies. So when it's a pause or 2 deep breaths, I think that's what all we can about handle in the moment when we are dealing with tantrums and things like that.
Yeah, kids hanging to you. You got one on the arm and one on the leg, and you're like, "Whoa!" Yeah.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
when somebody says they wanna help, Cassie, like, if somebody says to you, I'll come over and babysit. Yes,
Yes, please.
I think as women, we're like, "No, no, no, that's okay. I got it. I got it. I got it." Or they offer to bring a dish, to pass at, whatever gathering you're having. I got it. And we placate that. And then it's like, no, stop it. Right? Allow yourself to receive. Just because you're the mom does not mean that you signed up to do it all alone. And there are women out there that are having to do it alone. And to that, I'm like, I don't know how you do it, but it's a lot. But allow the help. Somebody says they want to, you got a brand new baby and they're going to come over and they're going to do your laundry while you snuggle your baby and nurse. Yeah. Do my laundry. Thank you.
Yeah. And honestly, I think by saying no, you're kind of robbing that person of that giving, the joy they get from giving and from feeling like they're a service as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and nobody offers to do that stuff unless they genuinely mean it,
Mhm.
right? I'm not offering to wash my laundry for just anybody or wash laundry for just anybody, right? It's if I that's somebody that genuinely loves and cares for you. If they're like, I'll come over and help you with whatever tasks that you need. Typically, right, it's somebody who has been there,
Yeah,
right? Because we talked about this too, right? But that moms who have been there, we know women who have been there, we've been through the messy middles of things. We're not judging.
right.
Kids screaming in the store, I'm not even looking. I might glance to make sure nobody's trying to steal that kid, but if they're just having a meltdown, I'm not mom shaming or judging or thinking because there is no rule book that comes with each little human that says, well, these are all the things, and this is the instruction manual on how to handle this model. You don't get that. And the judgment that can come in around motherhood that it should, I can remember like it was if you didn't use cloth diapers, if you weren't breastfeeding, there was a lot of shame, did you vaccinate? Did you not vaccinate? Right. And all of these things would come into play. Did you give your baby rice cereal too soon? All this stuff. And you're like, the one thing that is really instinctive is you mamaing that baby. Right.
Mhm.
So you get to make those choices and not, everybody's got an opinion on how you should handle and what you should do and that kind of thing. And I think that's really unfair
Yeah.
to really judge or mom shame and you just see there's just so much junk out there. And I'm like, no, like I want to love every mama where they're at because it really is a journey. And it's such a humbling process. Every one of our children taught me so much as a human being to go through their growth process, to kind of relive those years with them because they say that happens, that as they're going through that stage, you're going through that stage of life. And then their personalities are also different. And so what they bring to the table is different. And I know with 100% certainty that I am a much better human because I allowed myself to receive from them.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they just taught me so much, and I'm like, "Thank you. Thank you for that enlightenment." And they continue to. Now that doesn't make them always right, but they continue to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us parents and moms, we're really worried about just trying to raise good citizens,
Yeah.
good Christian people. It can be a lot, and I like what you just said, whereas we can learn so much from them, and we learn so much in the process, not just from them as a personality or an individual, but just in the process of parenting each of those kids. Yes, it's the hardest motherhood is the hardest thing for sure I've ever done. And it's also the best thing, and I know a lot of moms will say that too.
Yeah.
But
Most
yeah.
rewarding and the most insufferable all at the same time.
Yes, yes,
Some days, right? It depends on what you're doing but acknowledging that, right? And
right.
giving yourself grace for that and being able to actually articulate it. Like I can say it now without feeling full of shame. That there were moments where I wanted to rip my hair out because I didn't really know, like, And then I go back and I look at like, well, the baby stage was a lot easier than like preteens, preteens, they like know it all. And then once they get into teen years, there's a little more reasoning. And then as they get to into, adulthood, and each stage brings its own level of stuff that you get to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of moms too are thinking, okay, if I can just get out of this stage, like we're going to be good after this. And right, it never is. There's always going to be a struggle. And I think it's finding joy in the moments that you're in and being really intentional about. I mean, it's really easy just to like I don't want to say wish away the days, but you are when days are really hard. And I think if we can create practices around how to be more intentional, how to even just like have 10 minutes one-on-one time with our kids
Yeah.
and our of course, like our husbands or spouses, whatever. And so, yeah, I think bringing some intentionality into it is key.
And just saying thank you, right? Like, thank you. Thank you for this day. Sometimes your gratitude list is going to be, I woke up today and I ate and I'm going to bed now.
Yeah.
But we can still find the joy in that. Can I find the joy in the spilled milk? This is an opportunity for me to teach a lesson. Can I find it? And yes, I get it. It can be completely overwhelming, especially when the dog runs through it, because now, it's all over the floor. And then now the dog went through it. And and all of that stuff, I could choose to focus on that, or remind myself that, this is the blessing that I had really wanted.
Right.
And in the busyness and then the chaos of life, I know that you and I have talked about really being selective in what we put our kids into, right? That intentionality of, why do I want them involved in this? Is it something that they want to do? Is it something that I feel like as a mom and I'm feeling comparison and I'm going to put them in because everybody else is doing it? Because your family time is your family time. And that opportunity really is fleeting. Because once they start driving,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
gets
Yeah,
harder.
and we had talked too about just how do we create boundaries around that family time, whether it's some sort of routine or it's a Friday night game night or it's, you know, 2 nights out of the week when we don't have activities or sports or events, we are going to have a sit down family meal every single Sunday. We have a sit down meal. And I mean, there's a lot of research behind that. Thousands of kids were studied and they looked at and they found that they were healthier, they had less anxiety, depression, less risky behaviors like eating disorders and suicide attempts and things like that. And so, really carving out time in your calendar for these intentional moments with your family is one of the most important things that we can do as moms, since usually we are like the calendar planner organizers. And it's hard not to be pressured, like you said. And so give yourself some grace and feel confident in the decisions that you're making for your family.
And just know that, like I said, that there is no perfect. That is one of the things I work with people for is perfectionism, and that belief that there is some sort of perfect. There just isn't.
Mhm.
And if you can say to yourself, you know what, did I do the best I could with the information I had today? That's typically how I live my life. So
Mhm.
every day I'm showing up as my best self, and sometimes it's just messy, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and I think for people maybe listening to this podcast right now, I think there's a lot of good tips that you share with us, and we're so grateful for. And for anybody who may feel guilty in the fact that they're not doing something or they are doing something they feel like they shouldn't be doing, please, please, please listen and give yourself some grace. And like Corinne said, all we can really do is, well, now you know, and now you can change the present and the future. And, what you did in the past was you getting by as a mom, not getting by, but I mean, just making decisions based on what you know best and no worries and no guilt behind that and just move forward with the next best thing that you can do. So I love that you really focus on that.
Thank you. And I think I've never met a mom who didn't have a laundry list of things that she felt she did wrong. And
Mhm.
I'd like to shorten those lists for people because blaming ourselves, that's not helpful either, right? It's understanding that this is a process. in
Yeah.
its growth process.
Yeah. So, Corinne, if you could send somebody away with just one practice or mindset that you want the listeners to try this week that could begin improving their brain and their mental health.
I would try to capture one of the automatic negative thoughts, right? So we're going to catch an ant. We're going to catch that ant. You can write this down because they tend to be reoccurring thoughts. So when the thought pops in, right? Putting it under the cross examination or using the stop technique on it that we taught earlier. Use one of those techniques, but see what you can catch. And once you do it, it's not really like, oh, I did it again. No, this is an opportunity to be like, aha, like Sherlock Holmes, like, aha, boy, you're sneaky. Here's this little thought, and I'm going to squash it, or I'm going to stop it. And as you start to do that, you'll start to recognize, how do I feel now that I did that? And that's the main thing, right? Is get rid of that thought that maybe it's a comparison one. And I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt that said, comparison is the thief of joy.
Hmm.
And it really is. So, if you get that comparison thought, let's squash it. So many different types of ants. So that would be my catch the little negative thought.
I love it.
That's it.
Catch the ants.
Catch the ants.
So, Corinne, what's next for you? Do you have any projects, programs, anything that you want to share? Anything you're excited about?
I do. Okay. So it's in the works, right? Because I'm putting together a mom's group. Originally I wanted to start it at this time of year, but it's going to go into January. I have a knee issue, so I'm currently waiting to hear back. So looking into January. The inner critic workshop is something that I want to bring back to in person. It's just all a matter of finding the space to do it. If you are somebody that can bring me into your workspace and you want the inner critic workshop, I would be more than happy to come and put that workshop on. It's a 90-minute workshop and I'd be happy to come.
Awesome. And finally, Corinne, how can listeners connect with you or learn more about your work?
Through my website, which is www.Corinne, it's Corinne, Zuleger, Zuleger.com. You can find me on all the social media platforms, basic with my name, Corinne Zuleger. So if you search that, you'll find me. And yeah, those are the best ways. And you can catch me on my Secret Keepers podcast. So it's Keep Hers. So KEEPHERS. And that also airs on all of the podcast platforms out there. Those are really the best ways to find me. And I would love to hear from you. I welcome if you have questions, send me an email, cmzuleger9@gmail.com. If you have any kind of questions about what it might look like, if I can help you with anything, just give me a holler.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Corinne. And I really enjoyed having you today. I thought we had such a good discussion on what moms are really feeling right now. And I think you've helped guide us to capture some of those negative thoughts and maybe plant in some of the positive thoughts. So thank you so much for your wisdom, your knowledge, and all that you had to share today.
Thank you so much for having me, Cassie.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Wellness That Fits podcast. I hope you walk away with simple, doable steps you can put into practice right away. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with another busy mom who could use some encouragement. Until next time, friends, keep creating wellness that fits your life.